The cabin door refused to budge. I shoved harder, shoulder against weathered wood, when suddenly it swung inward and something massive crashed into my chest. Before I could process what happened, I was airborne, flying backward through empty space, then slamming onto wooden planks with crushing weight pinning me down. Two enormous paws pressed my shoulders flat. Scalding breath washed across my features, and directly before my vision appeared jaws filled with fangs lengthy as my thumb. A tiger, an actual adult tiger, gazed downward with golden vision, two amber fragments containing nothing except bottomless appetite. My single coherent thought, he already consumed grandmother, now comes my turn. Stripe, approach here, my darling. The voice matched memories from youth, slightly rough, comforting, with that particular tone she employed summoning felines. The tiger instantly ceased displaying teeth. He glanced somewhere past my skull, then returned to me almost regretfully, before abruptly rotating and vanishing into the dwelling. Boards shuddered beneath his mass. I remained horizontal, observing September atmosphere where vapor drifted lazily past. My fists trembled, my limbs shook, everything quivered. Eventually, I dragged myself upright, clutching the entrance frame, stepped inside, and my expression dropped. Across the dwelling's center, upon worn timber flooring, rested the tiger, enormous, banded, with a skull resembling a cooking pot. He rubbed that tremendous skull against the limbs of a petite, slender, elderly female wearing a flowered covering. She scratched him beneath the hearing organ and grinned at me as though we'd separated merely yesterday. "Why remain in the entrance, Alex? Enter. Shall I heat liquid?" I collapsed onto the seat, unable to shift focus from the tiger. Stripe, I already understood that designated him, which alone startled me, rotated toward me, observed me with contracted vision, parted his mouth in an expansive stretch displaying fangs, and positioned himself more comfortably at grandmother's boots, like a feline, an ordinary feline, only the magnitude of furniture.
"Grandmother," I started, and my tone wavered. "Does he constantly reside here?" "When he arrives, he resides here," she responded peacefully, removing the container from the heating element. "He possesses freedom. The wilderness constitutes his dwelling. But initially inform me, how is Sophie?" Something constricted in my throat. It required me 36 hours reaching here. Initially aircraft, then locomotive, then 4 hours transportation assistance, and ultimately on foot through taiga along a scarcely apparent trail I discovered only by recollection, even though I hadn't visited for multiple years. I arrived because I possessed nowhere else traveling. "Not favorable," I stated. "The medical practitioners claim they're performing everything possible, but for half a year her examination outcomes have only deteriorated. She's diminishing, grandmother. Gradually, but she's diminishing. I observe her daily and witness her slipping distant, and I cannot accomplish anything halting it." Grandmother Anna positioned a vessel before me, seated opposite me, and observed me extensively with her diminished but extremely attentive vision. Then she wordlessly rose and proceeded to the corner where platforms stretched from flooring to ceiling along the complete partition, loaded with bundles of vegetation, petite fabric containers, and traditional bark holders. She sorted through them gradually, inhaling them, positioning some aside. Within multiple moments, a petite accumulation of meticulously selected vegetation had developed on the surface. "Inform me in greater detail what pains and how," she eventually stated, seating again, "so I understand precisely what providing her." I spoke extensively. She listened without disrupting. Stripe dozed at her boots, and his audible respiration filled the petite cabin like the noise of machinery operating somewhere adjacent. When I concluded, grandmother nodded, assembled the selected vegetation into 3 petite fabric containers, and clarified how to prepare them, how much consuming, and at what moment. There existed no ritual in her tone. She spoke as peacefully as if we discussed a simple cold.
"Grandmother," I stated when she silenced, "you still need clarifying this tiger to me. Where did he originate?" She gazed at Stripe, grinned to herself, and started relating the narrative. 3 years prior, the winter was brutal. Nobody could recall one resembling it. In February, the temperature descended below -40 degrees and remained there for weeks. Even inside the cabin, where the heating element blazed from morning until darkness, frigid atmosphere crept in through the openings. That evening, Grandmother Anna was positioned at the surface organizing her winter vegetation mixture when the wind started howling outside and frozen precipitation fell so heavily that nothing could be observed even 5 paces from the entrance. Initially, she didn't comprehend that through the roar of the tempest, she was hearing something else. Some noises, strange, fractured, unlike the usual voices of the taiga. Grandmother proceeded to the opening and stared extensively into the white storm, but she could observe nothing. Then the noises became clearer, a low, coarse moan, and something thinner, nearly like a feeble cry. She threw on her heavy fleece covering, illuminated a light, and opened the entrance. On the threshold stood a female tiger. A large, completely matured female, her coat raised from the cold, her vision clouded with agony and weariness. At her paws, a tiny tiger infant was shifting about, just a baby, approximately 3 months aged, covered in frozen precipitation and shaking. Grandmother immediately slammed the entrance shut. "I'm not a saint," she informed me with a faint grin. "I'm just an aged female, and I was wise enough to be frightened." She stood by the entrance, hearing the infant whining outside and the female tiger breathing harshly, and she didn't shift. Then she proceeded to the opening and looked out. The female tiger was standing in the identical location, staring straight at the opening. There was no threat in her vision. There was something else, something Grandmother had learned to interpret over the years in the taiga without words. A plea. A few moments later, the female tiger gradually sank down. First her front limbs gave way, then her rear limbs, and she collapsed onto the frozen precipitation right by the entrance. She was still alive. Her flank rose and fell weakly, but she no longer had the strength to stand. The infant nudged her features and started to whine again. Grandmother understood that the female tiger was excessively weak to be dangerous, and she opened the entrance. She stepped out into the tempest with the light and came close. The female tiger didn't shift, only her vision shifted. Grandmother knelt right there in the frozen precipitation and saw something terrible. On the right flank, under the front limb, there was a projectile injury. The projectile had gone deep. The injury was no longer bleeding, but the edges had turned black, and there was swelling around it from contamination. "Poachers. I'm not a veterinarian," Grandmother stated, "but I've resided in the taiga for 4 decades and have witnessed many things. I understood what had to be accomplished." She dragged the female tiger into the cabin. Then she carried the infant inside and closed the entrance. She labored the complete darkness. She cleansed the injury, applied vegetation compresses, changed them every hour. By morning, Grandmother realized she was losing. The female tiger had lost excessive crimson liquid, and the projectile had damaged something inside that couldn't be repaired. Around noon, the female tiger stopped breathing. The infant walked up to her, nudged her with his nose, and released a mournful howl. "That was when I took him," she stated. "What else could I accomplish with him?" Stripe was small, frightened, and cried at darkness so audibly that it could probably be heard in the adjacent villages. During the initial days, he wouldn't let Grandmother come close. He hissed, struck with his paw. By spring, Stripe no longer fit under the bed and shifted to the flooring beside the heating element. By summer, he had grown as large as a substantial canine and started going into the wilderness farther and farther each occasion. In autumn, Grandmother understood it was moment. She led him to the barrier,
patted his throat, and stated, "Depart." Stripe stood there for a moment, looking backward, and then walked into the wilderness. Almost a year passed. The summer was scorching, and Grandmother Anna proceeded deeper into the wilderness than usual to assemble a special collection of vegetation that grew only in one location. She discovered the plants she needed, assembled as much as she could carry, and started backward. Then she heard it. Wolves. The pack came out of the bushes silently and quickly. The predators suddenly surrounded her from all directions. 7 or 8 of them, large, strong, glossy coat and sharp amber vision. Then a noise came from the wilderness on the right, a noise that made the wolves jump backward, something low and deep, something that seemed to make the terrain tremble. A tiger stepped out of the plants, enormous, with red-orange coat glowing in the last illumination like fire. He walked out and stood between Grandmother and the wolves. The alpha bared his teeth and stepped backward. The tiger took 1 pace forward, and the pack broke apart. The wolves retreated quickly, and within seconds the wilderness was quiet again. The tiger rotated toward Grandmother. She gazed at him and couldn't shift. Then she saw his left hearing organ, with a small notch along the edge. "Stripe," she stated aloud. Years later, when I visited Grandmother's resting place with Sophie, now healthy and vibrant, tigers emerged from the wilderness. Not 1, 2 adults, and beside them 2 small infants. The male walked first, and on his left hearing organ, a small notch was clearly visible. Stripe stood by Grandmother Anna's resting place, observing silently. Then he rotated and walked into the wilderness, his family following.